too.
first. Yeah, by
When
the
I was little,
Platters, right?
I heard that song and I thought they were singing The Great Green Teddy Bear.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I remember something very specific about that. My friend and I went to Macy's to get the album because it's a time to
Uh-huh.
get records, to get the record. And we're looking around at two little girls and we look up at the guy. We said, "Do you have the Great Pretender?" And he said, "Baby Tenders on the fourth floor." Baby Tenders, you know.
Baby tenders.
Tenders, yeah. But at the
Yeah.
time, I guess there was such thing as baby tenders. Maybe not anymore. I don't know. But baby tenders was what, a crib or something.
Oh,
So,
that's hilarious. Oh
isn't that
my gosh.
hilarious? I still remember that, the things we remember.
The
Right.
things we remember, I know it. All right, well, I'm going to turn this mic over to you, Dana Banana. And thank you for being here. We are live streaming on YouTube. So this mic is all yours.
Hey, hey, Lynn. Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me here. And it's funny. I wanted to first off, I wanted to start off by saying that I apologize for not making more of these live gatherings because I have not had the energy to do it. I think I've kind of reached this place where I'm so spent. But before I get into all of that, I do want to start off with a prayer. It's actually going to be a combination of two prayers. I want to start off with the truly helpful prayer because that is definitely the intention here. And I'm going to follow it with what I have read in chapter 31 in the self concept versus self, because it represents to me true surrender, which is a place I feel I am at most of the time. So I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent He who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. Yet I do not know the thing I am. I do not, and therefore I do not know what I am doing, where I am, or how to look upon this world or on myself. And it is this place, it is for me, the representation of what I think it would mean for me anyway to be truly helpful. I don't know that I can be truly helpful unless I can admit that I do not know the thing I am and that I don't know what this is or how to look upon anything. And in all of that, I hand this entire thing over to Holy Spirit, reinterpret what I think I am for me, reinterpret what I think this world is, how I see where I think I am, everything that I do, so that in that I can let you guide me and therefore can be truly helpful. So I just wanted to start off with that. And my voice is probably breaking up a little bit because I'm on the verge of crying. And I don't really know why. I don't have a specific reason. I think this is just emotion welling up because I have been wanting this to happen. I've been wanting the release. So last week when I spoke here, I feel like I may have been at my most emotionally vulnerable. I don't, maybe when I first started off with this whole endeavor of quote unquote teaching here for the hour once per week, maybe it was to help share things I've learned and so on and so forth. But over time, I'm realizing that I actually don't know what I have to teach. I don't think I have anything to teach right now. I do think what I have is stuff to share, but the sharing is scary as shit for me because it means that I have to be vulnerable. I have to lay this all out here. And it's a little easier for me to do when I'm talking to a miracle buddy. It's not that easy for me to do when I'm not talking to a miracle buddy, because I kind of feel like whoever I'm talking to may or may not understand what it is I'm trying to say. Whereas people who are on this path, and even as I say all of this, the word exclusion is kind of circling around in the back of my mind. But this is how it looks to me, and I'm willing to have this reinterpreted as well. But it's hard enough for me to be vulnerable one-on-one with somebody, including maybe even a close family member. A little less difficult for me to do with a miracle buddy, seemingly impossible to do live on YouTube. But it seems that this is exactly what is being called for. And this is the guidance I'm receiving. And so last week, when I felt like I had been vulnerable, sometime afterward, I experienced some massive backlash from that. And it showed up something like this: you talked too much. You were just a chatterbox of all kinds of personal information, and you've just let the entire world, AKA like 4 people, you know just how crappy you feel about yourself and about everything. And look at this. They can all now use it against you, as the proof that you really are terrible, right? And so for like the rest of the day, that is what was playing. And I'm looking at it and I'm recognizing the uprising of panic and fear. And what have you done? You can't get on and talk about yourself like this. You can't let people know that you can't let people know that you really feel this way about yourself and about things. They can use it against you, right? You've just exposed all of your dirty laundry to everybody. And I'm saying this right now because I'm willing to expose even that. So I'm probably going to do more of that today. There may be a little bit of profanity slung in there if it feels appropriate. So just that little, disclaimer, but I don't plan on it necessarily. But I'm just going to go into some of the backlash, I guess, that I've experienced this week. And it was maybe some of the strongest resistance, the strongest backlash that I have experienced as a course student, and maybe even from before becoming a course student. But my experience is, I guess, when you allow the stuff to come from the depths within the mind to be exposed, and it's not pleasant, but it's stuff in my case like, oh, I've always known you were there, and I never really knew what you were. I always believed that it was the stories. It wasn't what the stories were trying to symbolize or pull out of me. This week and for a little bit, I have been seeing the raw exposure of all of this stored shame and guilt that that has just been there. And it's been really tough to look at it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I understand why people don't want to do this work. I get why people quit therapy, and I get why people throw this course in the river or lake or wherever they do it, because not because the work is wrong, but because to look at that stuff within yourself is painful, right? It's very, very painful, especially when it's just kind of all dancing up right in your face and it's not back there anymore to be hidden. And so this is what it has felt like this week. And so Tuesday would probably be the day that I really, really felt it intensely. And then again yesterday, where there was just a lot of stored animosity, condemnation, the grievances that I have always found it so easy to hold against people just got very, very loud, right? I got pissed off at pretty much everything. I may have used the term high voltage in other talks, which to me is sort of like, you take your overall state of being, like the energy that seems to be under the surface of everything that you're doing and thinking and feeling that day, like a high active current, sort of like a downed but live power line that's kind of lying on the street, and you need to stay away from those things because anything that touches it could, it'll zap it. And so when this is the current that is under your thoughts and under everything that's going on in your awareness, in your mind, everything and anything that crosses its path that even touches it a little bit is going to get zapped. And that was the state that I was in on Tuesday. And I was totally aware of it. I could see it exactly for what it was. And it's sort of one of those things that it's like, I know I'm reactive right now, right? So I probably need to try to stay away from things and try to stay away from people and just be with this feeling and allow it to be here. But I'm afraid if anything touches it, that they're going to get zapped. And I'm not trying to look to zap anybody, right? But it didn't work because in this particular day, it showed up as neighbor stuff. And one thing that I had realized is that, I don't go out of the house to have like a job. I work from home, and I don't have a very active social life right now. I'm in total hermit mode. And so if I'm going to get triggered by people, then it's going to show up in whatever form it can reach me, right? And so in this case, it could be a family member I'm very close with and have more communication with. It could show up in my significant other, and it can show up in the neighbors, because if it's got to get pulled out, something's got to pull it out. So in this case, it was the neighbors. And just living in that state, existing in that state of anger and upset and finger pointing and condemnation. And I didn't interact with anybody, so it's not like there was any action taken, but I kind of just sat with it for the day. And all it did was represent to me how much of this stored stuff had been there all along, and how much it needed to come up, and that I was in the midst of just feeling it. And all day, I did not have the energy to do any kind of formal forgiveness practicing on it, or even to do a letting go technique. I was that exhausted from it, and just in general. What I was able to do, and I just kind of want to make this point, that sometimes the only thing you can do is be actually all the time, you should probably be just extremely gentle with yourself. And there's a difference between practicing the course and kind of forcing yourself to practice the course. This particular day, I could not, quote unquote, practice the course. I didn't have the energy. The fog was very, very intense. The emotions were very, very strong. They were very intense. They were very heated. And I felt like I can't even do it. The resistance was so high that there was nothing I could do in the face of any of it. There was one choice I could make, and there was one choice I did make. And it's the same choice that I make over and over and over again. And it may be the most powerful yet gentlest choice that is possible. And that is simply, am I going to resist, or am I willing to be willing? And with everything, and thanks to this course, thanks for A Course in Miracles and this beautiful, gentle teaching, that even when it feels impossible, it just constantly reminds us, just be gentle with yourself. This is a gentle course, and only your willingness is required. That was the light in an otherwise very, very dark tunnel that day. And so that's what I did. over and over and over again as much as I could. Am I willing? Am I willing to hand this over in exchange for the truth, even if there's nothing else I can do with this today? So that's what I did. But it was still hard. And then I had, I think I've mentioned, and this would show up as everything that took place yesterday. But I haven't been feeling well for a long time. And just, just to give a quick heads up, when I share, I'm definitely not trying to share what I've heard, throughout other groups where people share as war stories. I'm not looking to elevate or glorify any kind of war stories about, oh, my suffering and this and that and the other. I'm willing to bring this stuff up to demonstrate what I'm learning from it, or what I've been able to, how I've been able to practice, course principles or forgiveness on it. But I'm actually not even interested in the stories. I'm actually only interested in what they're showing me at this point and what they're bringing out. And I haven't felt well for a long time. And to make a long story short, as it turns out, and I've mentioned, you heard me mention it now, you heard me mention it last week. I've been carrying around a lot of stored unworthiness and shame and guilt and all of this stuff. Well, when it comes to the contents of the mind, these things can show up in the body. You guys know this, right? I'm not talking to people who don't know this. But it becomes very interesting when you start to be able to see the connections, right? What it might be symbolizing. And in my case, if anybody knows anything about the chakra systems, which is, of course, it's part of the dream, right? This is all in the ego's framework, chakras, energy centers, this, that, and the other. But insofar as dream symbolization and what it could be telling you, or reflecting back to you what is in the mind, a lot of this stuff tends to get stored in the second chakra, right? Which is the sacral chakra. That is, it represents the womb, which symbolically represents birthing of live creative energy, right? That is what it is supposed to symbolize. It's also a storage house for unworthiness, the belief in sin, shame, especially around this particular area, the entire reproductive area, all represents all of this stored shame, because I'm sure lots of people out there have recognized it's like the two go together, the sex stuff and then the shame stuff. And it all gets stored in this area. And for me, I've been walking around with all of this shame and this guilt over my being, right? There's not one thing. I have actually seen and have gotten in contact to some degree with this ontological sense of guilt and shame and sin, that my very existence, the fact that I am a me, is the problem. And it's all my fault. And that has gotten loud, and it's become very, very obvious to me, to the point where there is absolutely no story that can deter me from that seeing at this point. It's a core belief, right? The I am unworthy. I am the worst person in the world. And I can see that it's tied into existence in general. It's not over any specific thing that I've done. And in fact, over the last, I don't know how many years, I can't even begin to tell you how much self-improvement I've put myself through just to realize that was never the problem, right? All of this stored stuff wound up accumulating into what would be considered a physical mass in the area in the form of a 12 centimeter fibroid. That is considered giant. And so as it turns out, me, somebody who has never been in a hospital since I'm 5 years old and got my tonsils taken out, I have to go get a hysterectomy. They're going to remove a whole bunch of stuff. And it's one of those, I have to do it, or I will continue to be in all of this pain. And it is, when there's an imbalance in one area of the body, it transfers into all of these other areas of the body. When I had gone to personal training school, we learned that a problem in the shoulder could actually wind up showing up in the hip. You could think it's a hip problem, but the origin of it could be in your shoulder because one area will impact another. If you have a blockage in one energy center of the body, it can interfere with other energy centers in the body, and it can create an entire physical being of illness and disease and different symptoms. And we're constantly treating the symptoms, overlooking the cause. And then, in the dream world, you would look at the cause. Causes are often touted as lifestyle choices, dietary choices, and all of these other things. And you'd be surprised, you listen, a whole bunch of this crap is even out of our hands, right? Oh, it's the air pollution or it's the water. And what are you going to do? You're going to stop breathing? Are you going to dome yourself in your house with purified air and purified water and grow your own food all the time and never ever do anything in the world because it's all toxic and would cause these diseases? I don't buy it, and I don't think it's realistic. So once I had gotten to that place, it was kind of like, nope, this is an inside job, right? I can't blame lifestyle. I didn't feel well when I took the absolute best care of myself. I'm not telling people that they shouldn't eat right or follow their heart and drink the green smoothies and stuff if that's what they want to do. But I'm saying that that's not the cause and that's not the solution, right? Those are just the stories. So all of this stuff, all of this stored, unreleased, unforgiven angst in the mind will show up in different areas of the body. And that this week, I can see it very, very clearly for exactly what it is. And I find it very interesting. I'm very nervous about this surgery because, like I said, not used to surgery. I'm not a hospital-y kind of girl, right? Looks like that's exactly what I'm going to have to become this time. And but as nervous as I am, I could tell you that I was experiencing some guilt, about how, oh, all this forgiveness and letting go work that I've been doing all this time. It hasn't been enough to like loosen this thing and let it, and let it like dissolve. So I have to go through surgery because I wasn't able to be a good enough course student to have it dissolve itself or just magically disappear in the mind, like it does with other really deserving spiritual students. These are the stupid, crazy things that go on in the back of the mind, but they're not in the back of my mind anymore. They're right up in front of me now. So there was that guilt that had come up. But there's also this feeling of relief that it's like, look at what I get to see, right? I'm going to have an opportunity to have this removed in whatever way my mind is capable of accepting this. And I'm totally, totally nervous about it. But at the same time, I'm like eagerly anticipating this because to me, this is very symbolic when I think about this. Um, and just picture like like the size of a small cantaloupe kind of hanging out in the womb area, pressing against all of your organs and stuff, causing all kinds of pain and pressure and blockages of other systems and areas in the body. I'm going to get this thing removed. And it's not because removing it will heal me. It's because I chose to have these beliefs healed because I know I can't do it. This mass represents carrying a load that was never really mine to carry, but that I opted to carry and take all this responsibility for and all and blame for. And because over time I've been willing to let this go, now an opportunity finally presented itself to have just that. And it's medically necessary on top of it. So that was sort of the permission slip that gave rise to it. So just insofar as what does the body symbolize as far as what is going on in the mind, that to me was a perfectly clear representation of, here is all your stored trauma that you have been lugging around, thinking it's yours, taking complete ownership of, and thinking that it's up to you to try to fix it. When in reality, all you needed to do was be willing to look at it, be willing to look at it with my teacher and say, you take this. You take this for me. It's not mine, and I can't carry it anymore. And my loving teacher was like, all right, dear, it seems your mind is not able to let it go on its own, but your willingness has now opened up a door. I'm going to take it for you, even if this is the form it needs to come in. So, and insofar as the body mimicking the mind and its contents, I have another little story for you. Lynn Johnson, also the Pee and Poop Center. Yeah, somebody had replied to that. Yeah, the original home of shame, exactly. And then Mickey had put Ramana Maharshi and I can't even talk today. Nisargadatta. I know how to say his name. It's just not coming out. Both died of cancer. It's not your guilt. That's the cause. It's the universal guilt. And yeah, Mickey, a long time ago at this point, you had pointed out that just because we're experiencing, this massive guilt in our mind doesn't mean it's ours personally. It's the mind's stored guilt. It's the dreamer's belief in guilt, and we're all carrying it. And perhaps, it might get very intense to those of us who are willing to look at it and allow it to be here and let it go. We might be experiencing it a little bit more acutely because we've given it permission to do so. We're not constantly bypassing it or constantly projecting it out there unknowingly. But yeah. And I know that they both died of cancer. And as far as Ramana Maharshi, I mean, he was living proof that being the essence, the life force, the capital K, knowing one as God's self, is completely independent of the body, right? He just came across as somebody who was not bothered in any way by what was going on with his body. It was nothing more than a vessel for him to be able to communicate with other people, and he rarely even needed words to do it. So what a beautiful man and a beautiful representation of what this whole thing is, and what matters. But speaking of symbolism of the body, another health condition that I've had for the last several years is autoimmune thyroid disease in the form of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And the thyroid is located in the fifth chakra, which is the throat chakra, which controls speech and expression and authenticity, right? An autoimmune disease of any kind is the body's defense system attacking whatever it sees as a problem. And the way I look at autoimmune disease is it's a hyper defense, right? By the time something becomes autoimmune, that means your body is on attack mode, period. Anything that it senses in the body, it could be a perfectly healthy tissue, perfectly healthy system or organ, it's going to attack it because it's just in that hyper state of attack. I like to think of it, the way it has shown up for me, is it's like if you hired a bodyguard to stand guard of your property. And originally, its job was to maybe stop and question
Hey,
anything or anyone that looked suspicious. That over time, that bodyguard suddenly turns and attacks everything that crosses its path. So even all of the welcome visitors and your family members, and heck, even people who live in your house, even the family dog, that it's known so well, it is in such attack mode because all it sees is attack, that it'll attack anything. That's how I look at autoimmune disease. And so in this, I've always, let me see, Mickey had just said in the chat, autoimmune is like us attacking ourselves, something we do with thoughts almost every day. Exactly. And then Lynn put Vigor. I don't know what that is. Is that
Beeger, it's from Star Trek. If you're not a Trekkie, you probably don't know, but Beeger, uh,
Vigor?
Beeger was Voyager that we sent out into the universe to go and gather information, but it got hooked up with another uh, machine that was sent to eradicate things that were not good. And so it thought that it was to seek out and eradicate what was not good. And it came to got caught up on the Enterprise, and Kirk had to trick it into not killing everybody. But V'ger, yeah, it was just set. Originally, it was a probe, became an enemy.
Oh. You know, I've watched some clips from some of the different Star Treks out there, and I've listened to some commentary. David Hoffmeister has a couple of episodes on the Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment from some of the different Star Treks. Like I said, I've seen some clips. I never got into any of the Star Trek stuff, but just some of the episodes with the commentary that I've watched and then listened to the commentary, or even a couple of the clips that I've seen, there is such interesting symbolism going on that I really need to get into watching more of that stuff. And I do happen to I like some of the sci-fi stuff. Like I love probably lighter sci-fi, but like I loved Eureka, I love Warehouse 13, and some of the sci-fi movies, because you'll get some really interesting little nuggets of wisdom in them. So thank you for sharing that, because I don't have any doubt that probably was a beautiful representation of what like autoimmune is. Just, it's over attack, right? Getting caught up in the attack. And this is what the body does. And in this case, in this particular expression of it, it attacked my thyroid. And once I started to, well, let me back up real quick. After the diagnosis, obviously, I get my labs checked. I take my medications. So I'm not saying that just because things, you start to maybe get an idea of what, is going on in the body is just symbolic of what's going on in the mind, and that, it's all not real. All matter is 99.99999% empty mass, and this and that. That doesn't mean don't go to the doctor, don't take your medications, all of that stuff. I take my levothyroxine, I get my labs done, I see the doctors. I'm humoring it, right? That's how I look at it. Like, I believe you're here. I'm experiencing you as real, so I'll treat you that way. But I don't have to believe that this is absolute truth and that this is exactly as it's presenting itself. But I'll go ahead and I'll do what I need to do, because that's the kindest thing to do for right now, right? So it's sort of a know the truth, respect the illusion. I've heard Michael Mirdad, he's another really cool teacher out there, I've heard him say, and it has a lot of merit to it. But what's interesting was, for a long time, and especially during the first several years, that I had this condition, that I treated it through lifestyle. I went on Whole30 diets, I don't know, several times a year, which is basically, it's like an elimination diet to get rid of stuff so that you know what's causing the distress. I went gluten-free for a few years. You know, I was willing to spend the $7 on a loaf of gluten-free bread if it meant that it was better for my health. Meanwhile, I've never been told I had any kind of gluten sensitivity, so that was more of a precautionary thing. And with all of this lifestyle stuff that I not only had changed through this diagnosis, but had been living for years before because of the being in the health and fitness industry, I have to tell you, it made no freaking difference, right? It made maybe some of the lab tests after, you know, following it for a few years showed some improvements. But even while doing Whole30 a few times, 3, 4 times a year, and going gluten free and drinking green smoothies and what have you, my levothyroxine dosage still had to increase over the years. Actually, it tripled, right? Um, and the antibody count, which shows just how much the immune system is attacking the organ, it went down a little bit, but not that much. So, about 2 years ago, by this point, I'm already a course student, and I started to notice, I'm like, this isn't about the food. It's not about the lifestyle. It's about the guilt, right? It's about the relationship between the guilt and the food and what it represents to me. Does this represent I'm doing something bad, or does this represent I'm doing something right? Right. So I decided I was sick of following all of these fucking diets because after years of doing it, it was like enough. Right. I don't feel any better. I'm doing all the right things. I'm buying all of the expensive organic, non-GMO, farm raised this, grass fed that, free range, whatever, you know, purified water here, what have you, air purifiers in the house, and I didn't feel any better. So I decide, screw it. I'm sick of paying like $7 for a loaf of bread and $4 for a box of pasta, you know, because it doesn't have gluten in it. I'm not saying don't do the gluten-free diet if that's what you need to do, right? That might be the kindest thing. I didn't know if that was going to be the kindest thing for me, so I adopted it thinking that's what I should do. And as it turned out, it made no difference to me. So for the last 2 years of eating pretty much whatever I wanted, right? And I'm still doing it. I don't watch my diet, not anymore. I got to tell you, man, I went and had my labs done 2 days ago. My thyroid numbers and the amount of attack on the thyroid itself are at the best levels they have been in years. And it has nothing to do with how I take care of myself. But I do feel like it may have something to do with my recognizing what it was telling me and looking at all of this guilt head on by letting it be here, by letting myself feel it, and by being able to see how it has run my life up, you know, from however far back. So, again, I'm not saying that it's bad to follow a healthy lifestyle and to watch what you eat and to do all of this stuff. But really, for me personally, and I can only ever speak for me, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing, and it has everything to do with what do I believe about what I'm doing, right? Am I eating healthy because that feels less guilty than eating poorly? Because if that's the case, it's not going to truly nourish me. There's always going to be that belief in guilt that will be powering the behavior. And that's the result I'm going to get. I'm going to get the result of the intention, not the behavior. And the intention goes hand in hand with the belief. So, in looking at the guilt, and I haven't even necessarily changed a whole lot in so far as the behavior. All I've had to do is really look at it and feel it. Where in my life have I censored myself? Where do I people please? Where do I walk on eggshells around people because I am afraid that if I say the wrong thing, they'll get mad at me. And if they get mad at me, that is proof that I am bad, right? once I started to look at all of this stuff, and again, I haven't changed it except for doing these talks once a week. That's different. That's not something I really thought I would have done. And maybe part of this doing this once a week, is something of a permission slip or something of a softening of the, hey, it's okay for you to talk. And in fact, not only is it okay for you to talk, it's okay if you don't teach. It's okay if you don't have some really strong teaching and message that you can send people off with, as far as how to be a better course student and get what you want, but instead just be willing to be as raw and as vulnerable and as honest and authentic, even if it scares the shit out of you, which it does. This is this is being honest. This is being truthful. And in this, there won't be any self-attack because it's real. And I'm not putting on a facade here. So in all of this, yeah, Lynn just put just show up. I think that's the only thing in the chat right now. Yeah, just show up, which is pretty much what I have been doing. And I know I'm not special, right? I mean, I've spent my life thinking I'm special, but I can't be all that special. I can't be the only one that feels the way I do, right? I can't be the only one that has all of this stored guilt and trauma just hanging out in this dead mass in the body somewhere, or having it be attacked, through self attack. I can't be the only one. Maybe, maybe if I can just get out of the way and let this mask drop, right? This mask of, I have to present a certain way and sound a certain way and come across a certain way and try to control maybe what people do or do not think of me, and then how that'll affect me. Maybe if I let that mask drop and allow the face that has been underneath all of it, just like they talk about in chapter 31, just like the course talks about in chapter 31, this self concept that we use to show to the world we're innocent, we're good, and in fact, I'm so good that I'm like a teacher, and I can really help you. I can really like teach you things and make your life better, when underneath it all, what's really there is, I'm ashamed. I feel horrible. I feel like the worst motherfucker on the planet. Again, excuse the language, but I was given permission to do it, and it applies. But that all of that's what's underneath, and that's what I'm willing to expose. And that what anybody thinks of that, whether anybody were to look at that and think, oh my God, this girl, look at how pathetic she thinks she is, and she's showing it to all of us, and she's right, oh my God, I feel so sorry for her. These are the thoughts that show up, and these are the ones I'm looking to expose. And in this, I can see how that might actually be symbolized as a healing of the unconscious self attack of this energy center that rules authentic self expression, and has nothing to do with whether or not I eat gluten or sugar or whatever. So, those have just been a couple of painful but rather interesting things that have shown up throughout these diagnoses. One last thing I will bring up, just because I found it very, very interesting, and I kind of feel like just even earlier today I saw it clearly. I can only hope I can articulate it as clearly as it showed up, because I'm finding that over time, this desire to pull an image out of my head and throw it at you guys versus trying to explain things in words feels so much easier, because words are becoming so inadequate and complicated and long. I wish I could just share the image of what showed up, but I'll do my best. But I've also been anemic for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And I and I take these really high doses of iron because it's the only thing that'll keep me from being severely anemic. So in doing all of this, and as it turns out, the fibroid makes it interferes a lot with blood flow. There's a whole thing behind it. But even in taking this iron, my ferritin levels, which are the stored iron numbers, are at the lowest end of normal. So all of this sluggishness that I feel every single day, the brain fog, all of it that I've been actually living with for a very, very, very long time, it showed up in my mind today. It was like, what is that? Right? So the diagnosis with the fibroid and everything and what it represents, it all came together in my mind. And this is what it looks like. Again, I hope I can articulate it properly. There's a mass of guilt and shame and basically just a whole wad of unforgiveness that shows up physically in the second chakra area in the womb, right? It somehow it causes bleeding to happen, right? Extra bleeding to happen. This is what it looks like. To me, blood is like the life force, right? This is the thing that goes through the body, right? This is what represents life. And if iron is not present, it cannot distribute, it cannot bind to the oxygen through the blood and distribute through the body into the systems and the organs and everything to give it life. What this all represents to me is that this wad of guilt and shame and unforgiven, all of this stuff sitting here, it is interfering with the ability to store the necessary component to move the life force and properly oxygenate, hence breathe life into the entirety of the body. What this symbolizes to me, because of this block of stored guilt and shame, have not been able to accept and receive God's love, right? That is how it is showing up in the body. This mass represents all of the blockages to the awareness of love's presence, keeping it from being distributed throughout, making everything very slow, very, very sluggish, and it shows up as this massive form of resistance. And it's my own, not mine, Dana's. It's the mind's resistance to allowing this life force, this love of God, this knowledge of God, knowledge of the capital S self, to be accepted and received and integrated. And it is only in handing all of this over and saying, I see you. I don't hate you, even though I thought I did, Mass. I thought I hated you yesterday, but today I'm actually very, very thankful to you. I'm thankful for what you're showing me. Thank you for showing me so loudly and so blatantly and so clearly where I have been storing this trauma. And I am willing to let it go because now I am willing to receive my birthright, which is knowing myself as the Christ, as God created me, as the only truth there could ever be. So this has been a week of a whole lot of ego backlash and a whole lot of physical symptoms showing up in symbolism that somehow only through the grace of God and the grace of Holy Spirit and perhaps my willingness, because it has nothing to do with any kind of intelligence or ability, maybe it's my willingness. When I did the lesson, I am determined to see, I meant it, right? I meant it. And I feel like I've been seeing some of this stuff clearly, even in the midst of what felt like a week worth of complete, utter shitstorm activity in my life. So that's that's pretty much that's pretty much how things looked for me in a nutshell. Vicky had said, yeah, acceptance is everything. And absolutely. And for me, so is gratitude. It is impossible when you are in the pit of an ego backlash and it is loud and it is dark and it is vicious, right? Like this week was kind of like that whole, oh boy, the ego goes from suspiciousness to viciousness. Well, it is being vicious, right? It felt it. It was as though there was just a little voice next to me going, you are everything bad. You know it. Look, here's proof, right? I'm willing to let that go. I'm willing to not carry that anymore. And I don't care what it would take in whatever way that my mind can accept, handing this over to something or someone that is skilled enough to take it from me because I cannot do it myself. Of myself, I can do absolutely nothing except one thing. I can be willing. I can be willing to hand over what is no longer mine, right? So that is what this week has shown me. And that even in the midst of the absolute worst feeling backlashes, all it takes is a little willingness and and allowing oneself to be as gentle as they need to be, right? When I talk about letting the stuff up, letting go, doing, allowing all of the darkness or the shadow stuff up, it doesn't mean force it. I this isn't about making yourself do anything that doesn't feel right, but it's about whatever it is that seems to be coming up, to whatever extent can you allow it here? And if you can't, that's okay. Can you be willing to be willing, right? Can you be willing to exchange it for the truth? And I think that it's just when the course talks about that little bit of willingness, I think it's really the willingness to be willing, right? Even if you don't even know what you're willing to do or feel like you're not able to do anything at that time, can I even be willing to choose willingness instead of resistance? That is all I have been able to do all week. And it has been magical. So magical in a good way, not in a ego magic kind of way. But anyway, does anybody else understand anything that I've said? I mean, have I made myself clear? Can anybody else relate to just what it's like when all of this awful shit comes up from the surface and you feel terrible, but you want to tell people about it anyway because it just needs to go. It just needs to be released, and you're willing to look like a fool and to even humiliate yourself if you need to, if it means being authentic, and maybe it could be truly helpful to somebody.
Yeah, Mickey has her hand up.
Oh, here, I've got I can't even see the gallery. Yes, Mickey. Hi, Mickey.
Hi, honey. Yes, I think everything you said was so brilliant. And it's in that willingness to look at it that the Course tells us is where all healing occurs. Because if we're not willing to look at it, it's going to stay buried and it's going to torture us. And it's no movement is going to be made. And I think you and I are very similar in that we are both very willing to look at stuff and be honest about it. And I say almost every week, like, what am I going to say to publicly humiliate myself this time? I don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't care what anybody thinks about whether what I'm saying is, spiritual or not. It's how willing can I be to bring this up, and maybe it'll be helpful. So thank you so much for your willingness. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mickey. I really appreciate that. And yes, you and I have spent time talking, and I feel like we're on a similar trajectory with this whole thing. We just had a lot of shit coming up. It's a lot of stuff coming up to the surface and doesn't feel so good. It makes you want to quit. It makes you feel like you're a terrible course, at least it does me. It makes you feel like you're a terrible course student. You're going to fail. Everybody's going to awaken except me because I don't deserve it, because I'm special. And special doesn't always necessarily mean happy. Right? Special can be used to differentiate, oneself in a painful or a negative way too, but it's the same specialness. But yeah, yeah. And one last thing I guess I'll add to this whole thing, because I feel like it's been helpful for me. The pain, the intensity, I've said it before, I think the resistance matches the willingness. We live in a world in dream state that encompasses duality. And if you take, the whole theory of every action has an equal and opposite reaction, that everything we do produces the exact opposite. So if we're going to choose abundant willingness, we're probably going to experience the same amount of abundant resistance. So that in our distorted way of reading into that, it could look like I'm failing, I'm so screwed up, I'm undeserving, I'm this shame I've been feeling my entire life over just existing. Because to me, like I said, it's not specific anymore, it's ontological. um, but you can believe that, and it's very, very convincing, especially when you're physically and mentally and emotionally exhausted, right? That's when you're like on the ground in the fetal position. You got no fight in you, but it feels like people are still surrounding you and kicking. And it's like, I don't know what the fuck you're kicking anymore. I'm already down, you know? When you're in the midst of feeling that way, which is how I've been feeling all week, and to say, oh, I'm not being attacked. It looks like I'm being attacked. What I must be is abundantly willing, because here is its equal and opposite reaction to it. This is how it plays out in the dream. I must be doing something right, right? Not an easy place to get to in the middle of it, but sometime, I guess, after some of the clouds have cleared, that is a very strong possibility that you start to see it that way. And that is how I am seeing it right at this very moment, when about an hour ago, I couldn't keep myself from crying on a public video. So, anyway, that's my spiel for the week. I hope it was helpful. It sure went by fast, and I didn't have to struggle with what to say this week. So, and I thank you guys for being here, and for listening, and yeah, and for just being on this journey with me, for being mighty companions.
Thank you so much, Dana. It's been great to have you. And yes, I can relate to everything that you said. And I'm really, really grateful that, we can talk about these things. It used to be when I was younger, you did not talk about this stuff. And that's why so many women suffered so much because, nobody knew or cared about what was happening with a uterus or any other thing.
Right.
That had to do with a woman. I had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit, and
Yeah.
and when they removed that, that significantly changed my life. When I had a hysterectomy, significantly changed my life because I was anemic too, but that was because I was losing tons of blood all the time.
Yeah.
I had a period. It never stopped, no matter what they did. So, I understand that completely. And you will feel a lot better, guaranteeing that. And now I have too much hemoglobin, too much iron. Uh,
Oh.
it's pretty
Oh,
crazy. So, anyway, thank you so much, Diana. And thank you, everyone who's joined us here today on ACIM Gather for A Course in Miracles. I do appreciate each and every one of you. I'm so grateful that we're here together in this beautiful uh, uh, study, this beautiful change, just changing everything in my life, your life. We're changing the world. So, thank you, Dana. Bless you. And
thank you.
we'll see y'all next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.